The fight for control of Libya continues as the rebel seize control of the Gaddafi compound, whilst he himself vows martyrdom or victory the only possible outcomes. After the price of oil dropped amid speculation the end of the initial conflict in the country was in sight, it has since rallied. Joining me on the line to talk about the economic prospects for Libya and oil production in the country is John Drake from AKE Group, who is an expert on the Middle East and advises companies doing business in the region. Thanks for joining me, John. The situation on the ground in Tripoli is changing rapidly. What do you think will happen in the short term?
Violence and instability is going to persist in and around Tripoli while opposition fighters battle pro-regime forces. There was a perception that a lot of people would lay down their arms once the rebels reached the capital, but there are still a lot of people in parts of Libya, including Tripoli, towns like Ghadames, Sirte and Sabah, where there are ardent supporters of Gaddafi. It's not as if the regime is vilified by the whole country. So fighting is going to persist. There are going to be pockets of resistance in the short term.
We have seen companies unwilling to buy oil from Libya because of international sanctions and in case they end up doing business with the losing side. Do you think that could change with a resolution in the country? And what could the impact be on the price of oil?
I believe the oil prices are likely to have fallen because a lot of people were confident that with the removal of the regime there would be a redevelopment of a pro-Western democratic state in North Africa. And this would encourage more positive developments in the Arab Spring elsewhere in the region, and it would create a stable trading partner for a lot of oil companies who were looking to go back into Libya. There was the perception that the National Transitional Council, when it became more developed as a state, would be more willing to do business with oil majors from countries that supported the rebel effort, so European partners in particular. So I think a lot of people were confident that the oil market would improve as a result of companies being able to go back into Libya and do business with a friendly regime, more so, unless a less unpredictable regime than that of Gaddafi. However, in the longer term, prices may have rallied once again because there's been more speculation over the long-term outlook for the country. I think a lot of people assume, possibly a little bit naively, that post-Gaddafi Libya would be an open-armed government waiting to do business with the international community. I think that was quite a simplistic expectation. There are a lot of tribal, social, ideological divisions on the ground in Libya. And while perhaps they're not as entrenched as somewhere like maybe Iraq or even Egypt, they could become more exacerbated in a post-Gaddafi era in Libya.
If the National Transitional Council take power, how soon will they be able to return to the high production levels that saw Libya as the 12th largest exporter of oil in 2010?
It's going to take a long time, unfortunately. Firstly, when all the oil specialists who were not Libyan nationals left the country in February, two things happened. Firstly, the regular maintenance that you need to keep oil infrastructure up to speed stopped. The damage from the actual fighting wasn't as significant as it could have been. There could have been a lot more damage given the intensity of some of the fighting. Luckily, it's not been too bad. So it could be within a year or two time frame that production could return to normal levels. The other thing, though, as I said, that happened when foreign workers left in February was the international perception of Libya as a safe business environment changed irrevocably. And it's going to be very difficult to get companies not only to change their own strategies to go back into Libya, but to convince their employees that it's a safe place to return to do business.
Lower oil prices could be good for struggling economies and maybe even lower prices at the pumps for consumers. Do you think this is a realistic prospect in the long term with developments in the Middle East?
No. The Arab Spring is the phenomenon that started earlier in the year is going to last for a lot longer. Even if there is a stable transition of power from now on in Libya, this will only embolden opposition movements in other parts of the region. It will give them perhaps inspiration that they could achieve a similar regime change in their own country.
Thanks for that, John. The price of oil may well also be affected by the closely anticipated speech Ben Bernanke is due to give on Friday. There'll be plenty more on that and other news that could move the currency markets this week on Dukascopy TV. Goodbye.